the trick that I used was really very simple. I asked, how would you like to underwrite or to give credit cards to 10,000 Google engineers? As you can imagine, everybody wants to do that. And once you agree on that, then the next question is, okay, so are eBay engineers the same as Google engineers? McKinsey consultants, Bain, Goldman, and you start expanding from there. But that was, I think, the initial hook to get the interest.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders, and I think we can all agree that it's time to properly change the way we assign credit and lend money. Meet Elnor Rozenrot, CEO of Jasper, formerly CreditStacks. Elnor is the CEO and co-founder of the credit card company Jasper, formerly known as CreditStacks. Previously, Elnor was co-founder and CEO of mobile advertising platform Pingjam and VP of New Growth Platforms at LG Electronics. Elnor holds an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth and a bachelor's degree in law from the Academic College of Law in Tel Aviv. Elnor Rozenrot, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, the CEO of Jasper. How are you?
I'm doing very well today. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. I'm catching you in Israel. Generally, you're stationed out of New York with 52 employees, raised $30 million, and we're gonna have to talk about this idea that you're going to aim to recruit 300 employees by the end of 2022. I have no idea how to even fathom that as a young entrepreneur. And we're gonna talk about the fintech world, but even before we get there, Elnor, I have to ask about stare down with a bear. The story has to be told.
Yes, I had a stare down with a bear. Essentially, when I first moved to the States, I saw the company I founded here in Israel and moved to the States to get an MBA. And I went up to Dartmouth to Tuck, which is sort of in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, a beautiful area. And I was sitting outside one day working, and suddenly I hear shrieks of excitement, coming from my left side. And I look over and I see three of my Japanese neighbors kind of pointing in my direction and with massive enthusiasm. And I thought to myself, maybe I should move to Japan. But then I realized that they weren't actually looking at me. They were looking at a bear that was about 30 feet away from me, rummaging through the trash area of the compound. So I looked at the bear looked at me. It continued rummaging through the trash. I continued working. That was it. The fun part, though, is we sent a letter to the housing office of the university to ask what to do with the bear. And they said, just leave the bear alone. In the entire history of the school, only one student was ever killed in 1911 or something like that. So obviously, I immediately notified my parents that I've got a bear in the backyard, and it's only killed one student so far.
Amazing. Unbelievable. Now, that isn't the inspiration for Jasper. That is for another experience, but this is an amazing story. Tell me about your moving to the United States, credit score, fintech, and how 2021 is positioned to be an interesting time for this whole idea of credit scores and credit lines.
Sure. So the story actually starts exactly at that time. I moved to the US, but I founded and sold a company here in Israel, moved to the US to get an MBA, and I couldn't get a credit card. And it just drove me nuts. I didn't understand why, just because I was on a 12-hour flight. I suddenly turned from someone that banks actually enjoyed working with, I hope, to someone that just didn't exist as far as the system was concerned. And it took me quite a long time to go through the motions and build my credit score and get access to decent credit. But the story actually turns into Jasper Card somewhere around 2015 when I reached out to a gentleman by the name of Sar Wilf. Sar is one of the fathers of the Israeli fintech industry. He was the founder and CEO of a company called Fraud Sciences, which to this day is at the core of risk decisioning for PayPal worldwide. And I approached him actually with a very simple question. The question was, look, this credit score, credit bureau structure works fairly well for 80% of the people, 80% of the time. but what about the others? What about the other people? What about the other times? And we came up with a simple, logically, but very tricky, actually, solution to this, which is, why don't we underwrite based on people's future? The easiest way to understand that is, think about someone who's just graduating from college, 22-year-old, not much of a credit history, but they've got a job offer at Goldman, for instance. That's probably a decent future ahead of them. Think of someone that's just relocated from outside of the US to be a Google engineer. Again, no credit history whatsoever, but a great financial future ahead of them. So that was the original premise with which we started. We fired up a 1,000 card pilot with a small bank. Run the pilot for a year to test the thesis, see whether it actually holds in real life. The results, by the way, were astounding. We managed to come in at about 4x the industry benchmarks, if you will, both on charge-offs and on spend per card and a whole array of other metrics. And on the back of that, we went and signed an agreement with a new issuing bank, a much bigger issuing bank, and went through an implementation process and launched. And that bank gave us, first of all, an unlimited issuance capacity, and second, a receivable facility, a credit facility, basically of $100 million that we started using to actually lend people money through credit cards. So that's sort of the initial story. And just to share some general metrics, since we've launched Jasper Card about a year ago, it's been going fairly well. We've been growing 20% month over month, both in terms of customer acquisition rates and the whole set of other metrics. So far, things seem to be going in the right direction, and we're actually planning a whole suite of new, exciting products that are going to come live before the end of this year.
Wow, incredible! And so, first impressions on this idea. You're going to banks that are very used to the credit score system. It's a very risk-averse system in place. You're sitting down with people. Do they buy into it? Are they skeptical? Do they laugh? What happens?
So I think the most important thing to understand about banks is they are extremely focused on compliance and making sure that they don't do anything that's going to land them into hot water with the regulator. So their general incentive is to not rock the boat too much. So the vast majority of banks you'll go and talk to just have no desire to do anything that is different from what they've done in the past 10, 20, 30 years. There is a small subset of banks that are actually willing to do newer things, willing to do different things. But even then, the first thing they're always concerned about is, well, the first question to go through their mind is, are you going to get us in trouble with the regulator? Because if you do, this entire thing is just not worth it. So there's a very big component of building trust with the bank, building a relationship, building trust, making sure that they get a sense, get a level of comfort that you're actually a partner that they can work with, that will not cause them any kind of grief. So I think that's really the key part to begin with. And coming out at the time, we were starting out of Israel. So coming out with a team of, let's call it the classic startup team of a tech guy and a risk guy and a business guy, the holy trio, if you will, that everybody talks about, with the hustler and the designer and all that. And going to a bank actually scares banks sometimes, because they see a startup, and startups are sort of known for moving fast and breaking things, doing all sorts of things that do not work very well in a compliance-heavy environment. So in order to help create that trust, we actually had a fourth co-founder with us, who was a former division director at the FDIC and a board member for banks. And once we went into a room with that entire team, and became apparent to our banking potential partners, that we were very serious about compliance, about building a company that would actually have in its core DNA all the required components to work appropriately, to work the right way. Only then we were able to really start talking seriously about the business. And then it's a question of how much they believe in your business case.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that the trick that I used was really very simple. I asked, how would you like to underwrite or to give credit cards to 10,000 Google engineers? As you can imagine, everybody wants to do that. And once you agree on that, then the next question is, okay, so are eBay engineers the same as Google engineers? McKinsey consultants, Bain, Goldman, and you start expanding from there. But that was, I think, the initial hook to get the interest.
So as the CEO and co-founder, how do you go through thinking about the validation for the startup, right? So you're starting out obviously today after raising, $30 million and you're already working in banks. I'm listening to this idea and to this new concept of measuring somebody's ability to pay back through what they do and not through their history, which is, it's just so different from how the United States currently thinks through its system. How do you think through, your milestones of validation? Was it, a single turning point where you say, okay, now I proved that we can actually grow this at scale, or is it more, very small building blocks?
So I don't think there's any one point in which you sort of go, aha, this is it. I figured this out. And now, from now on, it's just a small matter of execution, as a friend of mine likes to say. There's constant proof points that you run through. So, and the credit card space, or anything that's really related to banking, one of the biggest challenges is that you can't do the classic MVP strategy of let's just roll something out, no matter how it works, whether it's broken or not, and see whether customers respond to it.
Right.
Everything you advertise that gets put in front of a customer needs to go through compliance. And obviously, there needs to be truth in lending and truth in advertising. So you can't just be creative or take any liberties around presenting things that you don't have, which almost means that you need to build the entire thing. You need to actually be able to start issuing credit cards in order to start getting real feedback, because anything else you do before that is more focus groups than real customer feedback that you can work with, that you can actually touch. So there's a lot of validation points in the process. There's a lot of points where you learn that what you thought isn't exactly reality, and that what customers want is not necessarily what you thought they want, but nonetheless, it still makes sense. So I think there's this combination of, on the one hand, having a conviction that there is a path that you can carve through this that will land you on a solution, on a product that customers will actually love and respond to in mass, while understanding that you're going to have to go blind, at least initially, before you launch and actually start getting feedback. And even then, there's a limit to how fast you can iterate, because again, this is the banking industry. So everything needs to be laid out perfectly right. And when you launch, things need to be, well, fully worked out. You can't just launch a partial product. So it's a very interesting industry. It's a very challenging industry to operate in, which is honestly part of the reasons I love it.
Incredible. And it sounds like you're at a point now where you're about to grow massively, and you're already on that track. And so what are the biggest challenges that you're positioning yourself with, as you're thinking, okay, now how do you do this at the economies of scale?
So I think there's several elements to this. One is we had to initially. I remember the first time we got our first customer, and then the first 100 customers, and the first time we got 100 customers a month, and then there's all these small milestones that help you build confidence in your ability to really execute on the growth the growth potential that you see. And we got at some point several months ago to a place that we felt that confidence, that we had a sense of yes, we can do this, we can pull this off. We can actually grow at a very radical rate. And then it really becomes a question. It really becomes a matter of being able to go and attract the right talents to grow on it, and attract the right capital to be able to execute on that, and spend the CAC and everything else that goes into that. But I think for us, once we reach that level of confidence, I'm not going to say comfort, because I don't think we'll ever be comfortable, really. We're paranoid by definition. Once we reach that level of confidence, if you will, that we can actually execute this, then we we actually stepped back and asked ourselves, is this all we can be? Is this all we want to be? And as you start looking around, you realize that the banking industry, with all the great things it's done for customers, is not fully caught up with the times. And if you think about the way, for instance, that power has shifted throughout the years, 20 years ago, institutions had power. Now, you and I have the power to take on hedge funds by using Robinhood, even though most of the time we will lose. You and I have the power to take on cab monopolies by using Uber, and then there's many more examples. The banking industry isn't there yet. By the way, the best place you can see it is you just look at the spreads. Banks, and these are numbers from about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they will give you 0.05% for your deposits. And they will then turn around and give the exact same money as a loan, sometimes to you, for 10.49%. And they keep the entire margin. Now, if you think about where the world is going, there shouldn't be that gap, because I can tell you that this is not all for risk. There's a lot of it that goes to various other expenses. So the way that we look at this, the way the world should be, is if you're lending money, I don't know, for instance, at 6%, then you should keep somewhere around, 2% to cover your costs and your risks, and actually give 4% to your customers, because it's their money, it's their resources. That's the way the world should work. And to a great degree, that's the direction that we're going towards. Now, for various compliance reasons, I can't talk about what products we're rolling out and what exactly we're doing until we actually do it. But we think there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of ground to be covered by bundling credit cards, because credit cards are just one small component of your financial life, with a deposit account, with lines of credit or loan products, and building, first of all, something that's actually fair. Let's start there. Just make it fair, where everybody wins and not just one party. And two, if you think about your financial life, and I obviously spend a lot of time thinking about people's financial lives, including mine, it's a bit of a mess, because there's a lot of different financial products that you are expected to learn, you're expected to master. And you're trying to run your financial life sort of in 30 seconds after dinner while you're making other plans. While on the other side of the playing field, there's a whole P&L team in the bank that actually knows what they're doing, right? So it's not really fair to require you to have to learn all these products. I think the best way I can think about it is, if you think about your car for a second, when you get into your car in the morning, it's made of tens of thousands of pieces. But you don't care where the tires are from or where the engine's from. You just press a button and you trust your car to take you where you need to go. And that's the way finances should work. So we're sort of aspiring to build that type of experience around much more of your finances than just the credit card.
I'm enjoying this conversation so much. You're giving me ease of mind, because I know how my lack of abilities to manage my own finances and to understand how this complicated structure works. And I never understand why everybody says that I need to understand it so well. Why does everybody need to understand it so well? It's 10,000 moving pieces. And so I can't wait for Jasper to continue and helping people like myself and like millions of others around the world live better, financially viable lives and take ownership over what we do. And so, Elnor, thank you for coming here and sharing your time and energy and sharing the story. I really, really enjoyed it. And I want to take you back to your childhood with a few short questions. Starting with your childhood, what really fascinated you as a kid? Whether it was a passion project or a subject in school?
So I think there's two things that I was always fascinated by. One is breaking things apart and then trying to put them together. I wasn't always successful. The amount of watches and cameras and other items that I took apart, car engines, and sort of put it back together it was painful for my parents. The other thing I was actually fascinated by was, and I know this might sound a bit weird, but by idleness, by doing nothing. Just by giving myself the time to dream, to think, and I sort of find that today I gravitate back towards that. once in a while when I need to really step back and figure something out. So I think those, if you'd ask my parents, those are the two things they remember the most about me.
Amazing. And if we look fast forward to today, something or somebody that inspires you on your journey?
So I guess for me, it's all. I think I'm an extremely lucky person because I get to wake up every morning and work on something that I'm truly deeply passionate about. And by the way, it's not about the solution because we could be wrong about the solution. It's the problem, helping people deal with this problem, solving this problem. It's an amazing puzzle. And the compliment to that is that I get to play the adult version of Lego blocks, if you will. We get, all of us at the company, we get to just build things that didn't exist there before. And to me, that's the true inspiring thing. I mean, obviously, there's people that I can learn from. There's people that I think have done amazing things. But I'm much more inspired by the problem, by the journey, and by the journey than I am by someone specific. So that's usually what drives me.
Very, very cool. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
Words. Well, I'm definitely an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious. And I just love to build things, to get things done.
Very, very cool. Elnor, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. Best of luck with Jasper. I can't wait to use it myself and to continue seeing it grow and continue expanding to more parts of the financial ecosystem. And thank you for taking the time to share this with me.
Of course. Thanks a lot for having me, and look forward to meeting again when the time's right.